That's my cue. Anita, do you mind taking some minutes, or does somebody else want to volunteer?
Thank you,
Anita's
Anita.
got it. Thank you, Anita.
Thanks, Anita.
Just make a note of that meeting time. Dave, Anita.
Thanks, Anita.
I lost Dave now.
know what
No, he
happened.
just turned off his camera.
No, I
That's
didn't.
fine.
I didn't turn it off. It just kind of did this. I don't know.
All right, you're still there.
I'm here.
Before we move on to Dave, I'm gonna, in deference to you, Dave, I'll try to hit some items for you quickly so we don't keep you long. But before that, I thought, and I kicked myself for this, Allison, I meant to be at the select board meeting last night because there were 2 or 3 items that are related to pedestrians and walking and things like that, particularly the tannery. Any quick update on that? Sagamore and this, I don't know how much you can share with me about the eminent domain related to the shirt tail.
Sure. Yeah, the tannery, I'm not, oh, the tan, right. I was having trouble making the connection, but
there was some update
yes, the
last night.
Riverwalk, we did a brief update on the releasing of the RFP, which, you know, the select board voted about 6 weeks ago to release that, and it hasn't happened yet. And Jeremy went through some of the hurdles that he sees as needing to be jumped over, like the trying to square things away with the DEP. And the result of that is that it's supposed to be released in the next couple weeks, but probably more relevant is the formal lengthy report was included in our packet, and then a brief summary was given by the consultant that was hired to help us assess the contamination on the riverbank. And he kind of went over the basic contaminants that were found and kind of the pathway forward, so to speak. So basically, there's a lot of really high levels of lead in a couple spots. There were no major surprises. Also, a lot of the contaminants like arsenic that are present on the rest of the site are also present on the riverbank, but it was nothing like you know, no super fund kind of stuff that that we would need to be really scared of. It does look like there'll be maybe some temporary stuff to try to limit the contact that people would have with the one area that came back really high in lead near the surface. But there's no set plan for that yet. There's not enough money in the for the EPA Brownfields grant to do everything that needs to be done. But it's, you know, things are going to continue as they've continued, and now we know a little bit more. I could go on for a really long time, but I don't think you want me to. So.
Oh, and I just want to clarify one thing. And I'll get to you, Linda. And Anita, the issues that they have are looking at the entire site, not just along the Riverwalk. So they're drilling and sampling from all over the site, and you can see those. I think it's even in the newspaper, there's a map, or if you're interested, you can write to me or Allison. I can send you a little diagram of where they dug their holes and done their sampling. Linda.
Yeah, and it now should be, if you look in the select board packet from this week, you can see like a 50-page report that has all of it. Good.
Linda.
So Allison, I was just actually reviewing that portion of the meeting from last night, and I forgot his name, sorry, but mentioned fences. Are they going to, do you think there's going to be fences put up along the Riverwalk or certain spots of the Riverwalk?
That was the first I had heard of it, and it kind of like raised my hackles a tiny bit, but so I don't know, and we'll find out more. I think part of, you know, the consultant, Brian, that was hired, he has some ideas about what maybe should happen, and we're trying to get a sense of what we would be forced to do versus what we might want to do. Yeah, that was thrown out there, but that's something I need to follow up on as well.
Little factoid, Allison, is that when we wrote the grant for this, we got points because it was talking about river access. And that's why they gave us the grant, part of the reason.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the Brownfield grant.
No, not Brownfield grant. This is the grant for the
Riverwalk?
Riverwalk. Yeah, the reason we got the money for building it, part of the reason was for river access. So the idea of fencing people one way or the other, well, particularly if it's fenced away from the river.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're not going to find any greater advocate for letting people get close to the river than me, I don't think. So that's, I agree with that. I don't see how it would make sense to strategically put a fence really anywhere necessarily, but I'll follow up on that and see what they have in mind. And I didn't get the impression that anything is going to happen quickly.
I was trying to give you some good substantial data that helps back up the idea of no fences.
Allison, to be clear, is it arsenic then that's the primary?
No, I would say the big thing that was off the charts was lead. Arsenic is at lower levels, also exceeding some of the rags, as they call them, but lead was what was the primary concern. There's some gasoline derived hydrocarbons, and there's some clear gasoline really when you dig down there and you can see, but it's not that what they said was the most concerning was lead, and that's the highest thing that's prevalent too. That was kind of the different thing than what's been seen in the rest of the site. A lot of what this is woolen mill trash rather than tannery related trash. So
Okay.
Even older. Anita.
Can you hear me? Okay, good. I wanted to know, Allison, how this report and the results of the report compared with your concerns that you've been voicing, especially about the riverbank and that sort of thing, and how the things that you have been finding along the riverbank entered into the final report. And I just want to get a read on comparing your thoughts and concerns with what you learned in the report.
From my perspective, the biggest hurdle that we were facing was the fact that they hadn't found any, supposedly there was no documented contamination there. They just kind of classified all of that as solid waste. And so we were ineligible for funding in a lot of categories to try to clean up any of that up. And so to me, this is kind of great news because we didn't find, once again, we didn't find that there is contamination migrating into the river. We didn't find anything terrifying, but we did find higher levels of contamination along the river bank section, the section that's very exposed to the public where we would want people to be able to sort of hang out. We found it higher there than in a lot of the other places, really anywhere else on site. And so I think in the long term, it will give us more options for pursuing funding when we want to do that, but it doesn't need to terrify anybody right now. So that's, we no longer are going to be told that if we get, EPA funding for this or that we can't use it because we haven't had any kind of assessment there. And so we just know a little bit more. And the other thing that I would advocate strongly for is that in any kind of lease or sale or anything of any portion of that property, that maybe we would want to widen the Riverwalk easement, especially along that section, because a lot of it is, if we go for the option in the long run of removing some of that soil, which is I think what the DEP was suggesting we might need to do in the section where they found really high lead. If the river, that would ultimately move the riverbank slightly, because it's really just made up of woolen mill trash in that one spot. But we would want to make sure that, you know, the river walk we'd still have plenty of room for the river walk if it needed to move slightly closer to Washington Street or something. So that.
We'll keep us apprised of that. And Allison, if you can move on to the
Sagamore?
I was thinking of Sagamore. Why don't we just do Shertail? Washington Street.
Yeah, I guess, you know, I don't know. I haven't been intimately involved in those negotiations, but my understanding is that they worked really hard to try with the Shertail sidewalk to try with this property owner to come to an agreement. There were some disagreements about the impact perhaps of the sidewalk on drainage for that property. The town paid for some surveying work to be done. And basically a lot of effort has gone into it, but it doesn't appear that we have an agreement. And so it's probably a time that, I mean, makes sense. We all kind of agreed last night we would move forward with the eminent domain process. To me, it's a pretty clear-cut case of a public benefit, and the select board, nobody voiced strong concerns with the path that we're on last night.
So this, in a backwards way, this is the reason, this is a reason why there hasn't been an RFP released for the construction work for Shertail, which means that and remember, it was going to be combined with Maritime. The two
Right.
RFPs were going to be together. And this was supposed to go out in the fall, and now it's August. And it's all because of circumstances. And now the latest circumstances is that this particular property owner is unwilling to negotiate with the town.
Right. And so unfortunately, then we have to go through this eminent domain process, which requires a special town meeting vote, or a town meeting vote. It's not something the select board can just vote on. You know, it's one of the weaknesses of our town manager select board form of government, that things take a long time. We have no real mechanism right now for doing a special town meeting. So
November.
possibly, you know, we have to wait until November, which is unfortunate. Then there's another, you know, there are a couple other things that have popped up with the Riverwalk too along there, because of course, for some of those properties, they've got this, you know, the sidewalk that we're working on in front of them, but then the river behind them. And so I've been sort of keen on trying to look for opportunities to work with people if they want a little bigger curb cut or something, and they're willing to give the town an easement for the Riverwalk. To me, it makes sense, even if it seems like a long way off. We should try to seize every opportunity right now for any property owner that will give us any kind of an easement, even if we have no clear plan for being able to use it right away. So there are a few little opportunities there that, you know, we could probably better to talk about offline, but.
Yeah, we're trying for those. That's sort of on my plate, and I'm aware of that. All right, thank you. I'm not sure Sagamore relates to pathways. It's more of a,
Jeff, can I ask Allison a question?
yeah.
Allison, is the select board willing to consider maybe the Pathways Committee could help in working on a more structured program for offering incentives to property owners as it relates to property taxes? If they provide an easement, even if the easement is not being used because there's no contiguous But just as you say, when there's an opportunity, the town would be wise to think of what kind of incentive could be offered to property owners to try to lay that groundwork.
Definitely, which is you don't get a greater opportunity than sidewalk in your front lawn negotiations every so often. So yeah, I can't, they don't like me to speak for the select board, but I haven't heard of any kind of opposition. I think we've long talked about that we need more of a mechanism for this kind of thing. And we can't negotiate on property taxes, but what we can do every time any kind of easement reduces the value of a property in terms of like the general town assessing formula. So it's very likely that any easement would result in some kind of a tax decrease just based on that. I think that maybe I've seen in the past, like really old town meeting votes where the whole town voted to charge people certain properties less on taxes or to waive taxes. They used to do it like the Seabright Mail and different things like that as an employment incentive. It's been kind of on my list of things to look up. Is that still an option for us if we were to get a whole town meeting vote to not make somebody pay taxes if we really got into a situation where we wanted, the Riverwalk to move forward? But
Not like spot taxes, right?
right. Yeah, I mean, some of
voted
it,
on by everybody.
right. So some
So
of it,
here's the question, just because we have a land trust expert among us. I mean, is there a way to kind of think of this more as a land trust, that the Riverwalk becomes, instead of it being a town facility, that it becomes a trust facility, and that, or, trust, and that therefore people could have some tax benefit?
I'm gonna bin this
Come out and point
because this conversation is tail spinning out to some very important discussions that we've had before, but it's a very lengthy discussion in terms of the options and models. So I will make a note of it and we will talk about it either later tonight, Ms. Clancy,
No,
or another time. We're not talking about this land trust thing anymore.
I'm not talking about that. It's something else that you had mentioned before that you were about to slough off too, but I have an objection to that, or a
The
question.
Sagamore?
Can I just say something about that one? Because if you do have the housing development going in there, then wouldn't it make sense that Pathways would be paying attention to connecting the path along Route 1 to whatever housing development is in there, to whatever trails. So therefore it becomes pretty integral to making sure that whatever housing development goes in there has pathways, multimodal pathways, not trails, but pathways.
Anita has been speaking to the woman who's heading up that development, and she's very pro pedestrian movement. And so we're continuing those conversations. That's sort of, we're working it off the page.
Okay, but
Nothing formal, but we haven't, is it time for a formal thing, Allison? Has it moved along that far?
it's not public, but I'm just speaking in general, and I'm speaking about the approach. And I know in Rockport it matters because we don't have a lot of mandatory sidewalk building for new developments. So it would.
We don't in Camden, there isn't any either.
Yeah, so it seems like it would make sense, and Sagamore being still hypothetical, not public, that some sort of discussion will be going on, but that would be a model for the rest of the town. But that's all I got to say about that one.
Okay.
Scott, we're just having the whole agenda item was just supposed to be like, let's make sure we're moving forward with a survey, because in all these years, spent all this time speculating about like where boundary lines are, and nothing ever goes forward because we don't have just basic understanding. So feeling on the select board was we just would like to have the property surveyed, to not have that be reliant on somebody, because people that have approached the town over the years have said, well, I would, they would pay for a survey, but then it would be their survey. And we said, no, we don't want to get into any of that. The town should just have a survey of this very important property to know, we should know where the current trails are, where the wetlands are, where the vernal pools are, all of that. And so it wasn't meant to really be anything more than that. Jeremy then threw in some stuff about different people that have approached him. And yeah, there's always, people approach me all the time too about like what could be at Sagamore, and it's always sort of the vision board stage of things. So, but I definitely think it relates to pathways, and everybody's right to be vigilant about it, and we should make sure, have a copy of that survey and all that stuff when it happens, hopefully.
And again, Anita is speaking to this person regularly, which is great.
Oh yeah, she's always very willing to talk. She's very enthusiastic.
Are they moving forward with the survey? What is the status of the survey decision, Allison?
When I was talking to Jenna after the meeting today, I was like, that conversation spiraled into this whole long thing that Jenna and I were a little bit objecting to, actually. But at the end of it, I was like, did we say we have a survey? Or we're doing a survey? Or what was do you remember, Linda?
Yeah,
Survey in the works?
This month or next month, Dartley endorsed it, but it's not
Okay.
yet, Anita.
I don't know what could possibly be taking so long, but yeah.
All right. I thought that would take less time, Dave.
Poor
You
Dave.
never know. Dave, I think you have a couple of updates for us. One is Pave Rounds, and did you want to frame out the Mechanic Street discussion, or just sort of follow along and participate, or how did you want to do that?
I don't want to steal your thunder. So I can just kind of participate in that, I guess. We have been working a little bit on Pave Rounds. I think you saw some on Union Street by Kim Ave. So we did, we improved the sidewalk over there and worked on like 2 Pave Rounds in that area. I wanted to give you an example of some of the difficulties with Pave Rounds. So one of the areas that folks probably are aware of is the one on Elm Street by the Town Motel. It's a really bad spot right there. And I was talking with the owner of the Town Motel, explaining what we were trying to do, and the Pathways committees identified these areas to help improve walkability around town and help with ADA, compliance. And I'm lucky I escaped with my life. So it wasn't popular. And I helped this lady, probably 4 or 5 months ago. Her basement had 4 feet of water in it. And I stayed there till 7 o'clock and got a contractor to help her out. So it wasn't like I was on bad terms with her, but boy, as soon as I started talking about taking a little bit of the grass out of her front, it wasn't even her lawn. It was really the right of way, to be honest with you. I was chased away with a pitchfork. So that's some of the difficulties with all of this. It isn't going to be really easy, and especially when it's in a spot where we're asking somebody to actually get on their property, and it is in the town's right of way. So that's my right of way or Pave Around story. We're getting ready to work on Norwood Ave, and we're going to be not putting in a bike lane, but we're going to be putting in a wider shoulder in that area. It's going to be a 4-foot paved way with a line. So that's kind of an improvement to what the street was. It was kind of something I added in after the road had been engineered and already, packaged up to go out to bid, because there's some drainage work and water line work and paving and stormwater work that's going along with that. I actually talked with Allison a little bit about that today, and if you really look at that road, the road really has 5, 6 feet on either side of it that's right away that you could theoretically, I think it was another 6 feet. Widen things out a little 6 feet, we could have had a bike lane on both sides. So, I guess looking at this stuff early with the mindset that, let's fit it in where we can and maybe proactively talk with people that are in the neighborhood about what we're trying to do might help with expanding the roadway system and the multimodal system in town. So we're starting that process. I mean, this is a slight improvement to what it was. And, the next project we'll do, we're going to look a little bit harder at it and see what we can do to help improve that. But ultimately, as I told you before at the meeting, it may not be perfect, but the objective is to try to get safe passage for pedestrians and bicycles throughout the town every time we make a little bit of an improvement.
Exactly. And thank you, Dave, on two points. One is for approaching the town motel owner. That's hard, and recognizing that this change in awareness of pedestrian and bikes takes a long time, and anything we can do to nudge the needle a little bit up is a win.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm just wondering what the philosophy has been from the Pathways Committee in terms of how much pressure should be applied when there's a case, for instance, like Dave was explaining, where somebody, technically it's in the town right of way. Technically, the town
Yeah.
has the right to do that. And at what point, when is it right to stop when a property owner is upset, and when is that, not the right thing to do? It feels like we, as a town, have avoided these conflicts too much for too long, but I know you can go too far the other way too. How do we move? What's the best way to move forward? Should the select board be making a policy, or I don't know.
Can I just give my perspective of what I see happening, like where Camden is right now, and Rockport's in a whole different universe? It seems like there's a lot of opportunity that conversations are opening. People are willing to have there's kind of this common vision. And it seems like, what do people want in exchange? And so that's like the leverage point is, like the town motel. What is it that you want that would give you, that you give us 3 feet of, and I'm not sure, Dave, what exactly it is, but 3 feet. And in return, like, here is this whole opportunity to increase your business, because you're now going to have people who are going, so what are the leverage points that people see as that's going to shift them in their thinking? But it comes down to what can you give? And so I feel like that Camden has, since I've been here, and so this has been since 1980, it seems like there are people who are on the same vision. And what are the key conversations that could shift people?
Mm-hmm. And to
It's
me,
even trickier. It's even trickier because, as Dave said, this is in the right of way. So
we don't have to give her anything.
don't have to give her anything. But Dave, I'm not 100% sure that's in the right of way there. I think it's really narrow.
Well, I was looking at it, and what I did was I took my tape and I kind of did a half moon around the pole to kind of show her what I needed. And, in looking at it, we weren't taking much of the grass away to do that. And it was only a 4-foot section where we would do it, because it's not like we're widening the whole walkway in front of our house. It's a pave around.
That's the idea.
And she wanted no part of that. It was, I'm trying to sell my property, and that's going to make it not look good. And You know, she just, and I tried to be real, you know, I tried, you know, do what I do to explain the situation, and I was being very polite. And I think she maybe wasn't having a good day, maybe, I don't know. So I decided that, you know, it was time to pack up my shovel and walk away. That's kind of what I did.
And Margot brought up a constructive comment, which was, you know, ask, what do people want in exchange? Maybe we can do it, maybe we can, just can't.
Well,
Like,
Does somebody else have an,
I
hearing
think
what
what,
Dave just said, in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, I actually have access to an army of students who, and not necessarily students that I work with, but there's this other group of students at the high school, which is Camden for Community, that are looking for things. They'd be willing to do a social media campaign that could actually help this woman sell her property. And there's kind of like a win-win here, but that's the conversation that needs to happen, is that, you know, here is this property that is totally into green, and, you know, let's push her up the, you know, TripAdvisor charts or whatever. But, you know, that's the leverage point in those conversations that can help, because otherwise you stay stuck.
yeah, you have to have
Yeah.
something to negotiate with, I guess. And if you have those things, I don't understand why in that location, because I was really going over there to improve the sidewalk in front of the Captain Swift Inn, because there was holes, and I went out over there and they were on the deck cheering. And then I went next door and they were like, you know, chasing me away. So I think they get it. I mean, having a nice sidewalk there is going to make it more walkable for the people at the motel so they can get around. And
Dave, aren't they interested in having it properly plowed in the wintertime?
well, that's the other point. I was explaining that
Handicap accessible, or
we can't get through there right now because of the poles and everything. And that's part of, you know, maintaining it. And I wasn't making very good headway. So maybe sometimes a different ambassador is better for different people. And I may not have been the right ambassador at the time. So
well, the two ways, Dave, on those points. One is the idea of creating more awareness of
Right.
bikes and peds,
Yeah.
which segues really well to the Mechanic Street work that we're going to talk about in a minute. But also not only awareness, but going or approaching people based on who knows whom really can help, property by property, and looking at that. So one thing that immediately happens, Dave, is if you're going to go to the town motel, you could send me a quick email or send an email to the Pathways Committee, say, does anybody know Mrs. Smith or Mr. Smith? Because maybe we could be there standing next to you and go, oh, hey, how's it going? Because a friendly
Yeah.
face can sometimes help. Not always, but sometimes.
Probably a good point. It was kind of an opportunity because, like I said, I was really there to improve the sidewalk in front of the Captain Swift Inn, and she came out and I saw her there and I said, well, hey, this is a great opportunity to tell her about the Pave Round. And I had helped her previously. So I thought, hey,
Yeah,
this
no,
will- yeah,
totally makes sense.
right.
Totally makes sense.
And then I was like, oh boy.
I would have said, send Dave in because he just helped her and she'll be really helping you.
Yeah. That would have been, yeah,
Didn't
you would have
work.
been the natural. Absolutely. All right.
Hey,
Linda's
just
been
add
raising her
something,
hand.
Jeff.
Linda?
Are you, in terms of this meeting, are you watching for hands, or am I sort of just like waving for no reason? Because I'm happy to break in, as I usually do. So whatever works for you.
I like that. I like the hand thing, Linda. Otherwise, the breaking in doesn't work so well because it's a one way, you know.
Okay, so I'm gonna, from now on, just raise my hand, but I just wanted to say concerning Allison's point, you know, should there be a policy? I always go back to what happened in Rockport in 2000 when, you know, Pathway was gonna come down Meadow Street and Park Street to the high school, and one property owner put the kibosh on the whole thing and got the whole town to a selectmen's meeting, and it blew the whole thing to hell. And why was that? Because the town did own the right of way. So I do believe that there's an element of firmness too, that the towns should adopt going forward. I mean, we go out of our way to accommodate everybody from homeowners to Maine Water to corporations. But at some point, the public good has to outweigh every single conversation to be had to get people on board. So that's my 2 cents, is that you know, it's not a policy, Allison. I think it's just a general agreement that, you know, we're going to move forward with something like you guys are thinking
On Shirt Tail on Washington Street. That's an amazing step by the town. I've never heard of it by this town.
Right, that's why I'm happy about the eminent domain thing. Sorry for breaking in, but I think it's good for us to go through that process every so often. And just because it is an option, and lots of towns do it on a regular basis. Lots of cities do it on a regular basis. And here, for some reason, it's because we all know each other and you don't want to see people at the grocery store or what, I don't know. But we've been too not courageous enough, I think.
Richard, did I see your hands go up in frustration?
My hands went up, but not in frustration.
Oh, all right. Anything else before we move on?
The other thing is one of the reasons why that situation is in front of the town motel is the utility pole that was put in place there. I think Anita might have mentioned it. And it was disgusting. I mean, it was literally, the one that was there was bad, and this one was worse. They put it closer.
Unbelievable.
I mean,
Unbelievable.
and I had an opportunity to talk with the person from the, you know, the utility company, and I learned a little bit about, you know, who owns what in Camden. And for the most part, one little interesting tidbit is the utility pole, the utility poles and the utility companies. There's no overseer of any of these things. PUC doesn't have any kind of, you know, person that goes out to make sure they're doing the right thing and they're putting them in the right place and they're following the right policy and they're moving things over in a timely manner. It's the Wild West. And they've set up this kind of structure where you can't really get a hold of anybody. You can't talk to anybody because it's a tragedy of the commons. There's 5 different people using the utility pole, and you never know which one to talk to. And I think it's almost like made that way. It's like a you know, a crazy trap. You know, you just can't navigate through it. So something that someone has to have the courage to kind of muster up is some kind of rule-making process that holds the utilities accountable to the town where they put their utility poles, and some kind of process and timeline of moving them and transferring them over. I mean, they dug the hole and put the pole in, and they left all the dirt around the pole. So now not only the pole's in the sidewalk, but, you know, a wheelbarrow full of dirt was around the side of the pole, and you couldn't, so now you had even less room to get by. You had like a foot of room to get by the sidewalk. Then when I told the utility company about it, he told me, well, there's a reason why we leave the dirt there. It's so when we pull the other pole out, we can use that dirt to fill the other pole hole. I said, yeah, but you never pull the other pole out. I said, so, you know, I said, that's crazy. I mean, it was the most crazy thing I ever heard. So I don't know how to fix it. Audra and I are kind of working on it. But there needs to be some kind of movement with that whole process. They really should be held accountable and contact somebody to make sure where they're putting it is okay. And yeah, it might hold them up, but you know what? They can really mess up a sidewalk when they just show up and On Target comes in and drills a hole in the middle of your perfectly fine ADA compliant sidewalk. I mean, there should be a consequence to that. I don't know. I know I'm preaching to the choir, but if you guys have any other creative ways of thinking of writing to the legislature or something like that,
I think it
saying,
may have to be at that point, Dave, but
Yeah.
I have a feeling that Helen may have some insight. I'm hoping she's going to tell us how Ingraham Hill happened. I'm hoping.
I have know nothing about how Ingraham Hill, but I understand Camden may be rewriting their town charter.
Yes.
Okay, so why can't there be something in the charter about interactions with utility companies, water companies, and so on, and setting out how they're supposed to interact with the town and notice fence and stuff like that? I don't think you need to go to the legislature.
it's not just that, okay? That will work with, getting them to contact me and saying, hey, I want to do this. But then there's the bigger problem of once that happens, the transferring of all of the 4 or 5 different utilities off of that pole onto the other one. That's one of the bigger problems, and you may not notice it, but if you drive around sometimes, you'll notice there's a lot of new poles and there's a lot of old poles right next to them. And you can't pull the old pole until all of the utilities are put on the new pole. And nobody is watching how that happens or creating some kind of process and a timeline to make sure that happens in a timely manner.
You
So-
might want to talk to Bill Post, because I think I know they're moving a bunch of electrical and all sorts of wires from one pole and putting them underground to the library and then up to another pole. So he may have some idea, or Mike at Public Works might have some idea as to how they interacted to get that done.
I know how to interact with them. I'm just saying this is a statewide problem. It's
Okay.
hands down a
I think
statewide
it's-
problem.
I think it's legislative. We got to figure out which the committee is that you write to.
Yeah.
Linda and then Anita.
So, I mean, Dave's got a really good point, and it's possible we could craft something up from our perspective to give to Dave or Vicky, Dave Miramon or Vicky, or Penny or somebody to move it forward. And it depends who's on which committee. But this is an ideal time to go after, to do something like that, and require CMP and the Amira to start sort of accommodating the municipalities more than they do. So,
Right.
I mean, we could do that. It's easy enough.
I think that's a great idea. I mean, like Fairpoint, CMP doesn't even own a utility pole in Camden. They're all
Yeah.
Fairpoints.
Yeah,
I didn't really even know that. This is an interesting bit of information that somewhere along the line, they drew a line in the sand and they said, all of these poles that are in Camden are Fairpoints unless there's only a CMP utility on it. If there's more than a CMP utility on it, it's a Fairpoint pole.
I don't even know if it's that simple of a rule, Dave. I have a feeling there's some other owners of poles in town as well.
Audra's
is
been
what-
on this amazing mission to try to, it's probably very connected to what Dave's saying, but
It is. It's kind of what I'm talking about.
Audra can tell, she shares little bits and pieces, and I keep saying, you've got to write this all down and share the whole story, because she's been on
Crazy.
trying to get the poles that are down by Mechanic Street and Washington Street, and
Yep.
they're like literally falling over into the intersection and like
Yeah,
stuff
yeah.
dangling off them.
Yeah, it's awesome.
He's been working really hard, and she's like guessing at people's email addresses and calling companies, and it's pretty interesting. A big problem.
Yes, I think Dave's summary is absolutely spot on. Anita, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, Jeff, I'm in very strong agreement with you that it seems to me the only way to approach this would be a law at the state level, because there is no incentive whatsoever that I can imagine that any of the utilities would have to do anything that is even slightly beyond their highest and best convenience to them personally or to their operations. They have no reason to do anything any other way unless there's legislation and fines. You just have to set a set of rules that's statewide about this. So I guess the action item would be to see if what are we gonna do? Who's gonna approach a senator or representative and
Well, let's just
How-
we'll contact Vicky and Dave, send them an email with a, sort of the outline of what Dave is talking about with some language.
Okay, is that you, Linda? Is that you, Linda?
I'm happy to. It's, I think that's how you get the ball started.
I can help you draft that.
Yeah, in terms of submitting something, once the election's over, there's a date set, usually in December, 1st or 2nd week of December, by which time any proposed legislation needs to be submitted to the committee or to the office over there. It does not have to have all the wording to it. It can just be a title and a general outline, and then the office of the revisor's office will write the bill itself. But the more information that they have as to how you want to go, the better. And Dave is
Yeah.
very receptive to the submitting things. I don't know
Yeah.
Vicky in terms of that.
Vicky
Yeah.
also.
So we'll write them
All
both.
right.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you, Linda. That's awesome.
And,
I can help you with some of that too, Linda, about the, the kind of the things that we're looking for, I think, and, maybe pass it around to some other towns to see kind of what their feelings are about it. But I mean, there needs to be some kind of guidelines and somebody watching what happens. It shouldn't just be whatever.
Okay, so we'll get in touch, email, and get it going.
Yeah.
all right. Thank you. Let's go straight to Mechanic Street because that's time sensitive. Anybody raise their hand if they have not looked at this proposal from BCM? Helen, you are so guilty.
Do you want me to
I?
pull it up and share this, or somebody can pull it up and share their screen? Is that helpful, or?
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, just make sure everything goes to my new email address, because by the time I shift everything around, it gets lost, or try to shift everything around.
Dave, do you want to do that, or do you want me to share the version that I have, and then you can choose?
Sure. I mean, if you like, just if you have it right there, pop it up. And do you want me to explain it?
If it's faster for you, if you have it right there, then you can.
I have it up, but I don't know how to share my screen.
Just go down, look at the bottom, and click on share screen.
Yeah, I don't have that option.
Oh,
I
okay.
will,
I can do it.
I got it right here.
Okay.
You want me to
It's
show the
something
consent?
about, I think, me not hosting or something. I don't know.
I mean,
Okay, so
Oh, I got it. Here it
you want me
goes.
to,
I got it.
beat me to it.
Is that it?
yep.
That's it.
So this
So
is,
there you go.
go ahead, Dave. Do you want to?
So one of the objectives that we had talked about was trying to get some kind of connector to the snowball. And because we were doing Mechanic Street, we looked at this as a good opportunity to do a couple things, do some traffic calming and create some increased opportunities for bicycles and make them a little safer. One of the ways you can do that is with an advisory lane. I contacted the Bicycle Coalition of Maine, Jim Tassi. I'm sure you're all aware of who he is, and he's really knowledgeable with these kinds of things. So we came down, and Audra and Randy and Jim, we all walked the road and talked about what we could do, and reviewed it. And Jim put together a kind of an illustration of some one way of doing it. And what it entails is an advisory lane. Kind of what it does is it will put dashed lines 5 feet from the edge of the road towards the center line on each side,
Like this
creating-
picture.
creating a bike path going in the same direction as the traffic. But the other part of it is it narrows up the travel lane in the middle to the point where two vehicles, when they're approaching each other from different directions, actually don't have enough room at times depending on how wide that travel lane is, to pass each other. So they have to veer into the advisory lane so that they can pass each other, as long as there's not a bicyclist or pedestrian in the advisory lane. The objective is to slow people down so that it's a more feeling of being uncomfortable. The road's not as wide, and I'm talking about the motorists. So if you can see here, this illustration kind of depicts it pretty well. So that travel lane right there could be anywhere between 10 and 16 feet. And it depends on, what the road is and the width of your road. Mechanic Street, for a good part of it, has enough width to it where we could do this pretty easily, but doesn't have enough width where we could dedicate an actual 5-foot bike lane the whole way and then have 2 travel lanes in the middle. So that's why this option kind of seems to fit in well. The problem with it is that when you lose line of sight, either you have a curve or you have a hill, then it can become dangerous. So the thought process is you lose the advisory lane and you put a sharrow, which means you come out of the advisory lane if you're a bicyclist, and now you move into the road and share the roadway. And you also put a yellow line in the middle to show people that, okay, there's 2 lanes here now. So then the motorists have a place to be in the road, and the bicyclist or the pedestrian knows that at this point they need to be cautious and use the road for that section. I think it's thinking outside the box. It's not done. It's done in Europe all over the place. It's done in other parts of the state. It's done a lot in California and other places. It's not done a lot in Camden. So because of that, everybody's a little concerned that they don't want to do it wrong because it could prohibit us from expanding it or doing it in other places. And on the other hand, it might work really well and slow traffic down and be a great thing for bicyclists. We talked about it at the select board meeting, and I think everybody liked the idea until I got to the end and kind of showed, after I looked at the road a little more carefully, showed some areas of concern. So I felt that looking at it again with BCM and maybe some other people from DOT to make sure that we're looking at all the options to help with traffic calming and help create safe space for bicyclists and pedestrians. So that's kind of where we're at. We're going to be meeting next week. I think Jeff and Jim Tassi and I are meeting the day before. I think it's Wednesday, right, Jeff? Wednesday, I think we're meeting. We're going to do some sightline kind of measurements just so we have that data. And then we're going to meet on Thursday with, I believe, some individuals from MDOT. I actually invited Pete Coughlin from Maine Local Roads. And I also, Jeff is going to be there, myself, and I think that's Jim Tassi from BCM. I think that'll be the working group. And we're going to try and put together a proposal for the select board to okay. There's some other caveats to putting in this kind of treatment to the road. You actually get federal highway. You don't have to, but federal highway, you should fill out a release from federal highway to okay it. That's another thing that they ask you to do. And Jim's write-up also suggested that we have the MDOT traffic engineer approve it. That's one of the people that will be there. So that's where we're at. I had another thought to this whole road treatment, and it's a little less radical. And it's kind of my fallback plan if this doesn't seem to pan out. Doesn't mean I don't want to do this. It's just you have to have a bunch of different ideas in order to kind of move the chip forward with something like this. And another thought process I had was to put a fog line down each side of the road and provide two travel lanes that would be 9 feet or 8.5 feet, 9 feet wide. So an 18-foot travel way in the middle, and then split the difference on each side with a fog line all the way down the road. And anywhere where I lost any more than 4 feet in the shoulder, I'd put a sharrow in the roadway in that location. And it's kind of the same thing, but it isn't. The only thing about that is I don't think it'll create as much road friction and traffic calming as the advisory lane. So kind of where I'm at. I think I shared those things with Allison. I don't know if I shared that second part with you, Jeff.
No,
Doesn't mean that's what we're going to do. I mean, this is just, I'm thinking of all kinds of different things. Like I told, Allison and I talked a little bit about it. And my fear is that I don't want to try and put in a road treatment in an area that it's not advisable, and then have an accident happen, and then everybody go, oh yeah, look, they went and did that crazy thing and it didn't work, and then we'd never be able to try something a little outside the box again. That's my biggest fear, but then again, I don't want to stop it from me trying to do things a little bit different.
yeah.
I'll leave it at that.
It's a good point, Dave. And the purpose of this discussion for everybody is so that when Dave and I are part of that meeting next week, we have input from the Pathways Committee on the thoughts of the group, so I can properly represent that. Helen.
Yeah, it looks very interesting, and it certainly is outside the box. What I am concerned about is some macho guy in a big, huge truck just ramming themselves through in disregard to the other oncoming traffic, and thereby forcing the poor little old lady off into the accessory lane, or
That's
the
exactly-
teenagers who are zipping up and down and to hell with everybody else.
That's exactly what I said.
Yeah, you did, not exactly, but it's the same idea.
No.
No, he said that exactly.
I said that exactly to Allison about an hour ago.
And
Oh.
what about the people coming from out of state, or who I've never seen this anywhere else, so I'd be confused. And then you have other people who are looking for their rental, or they're looking to go to someplace and they are even more confused.
Well, signage would be key.
Yeah.
So what was the community response to this?
There hasn't been yet.
Well,
Allison?
I mean, I also, to talk about the little like small group of people getting together, I do think it's very important that at least you have a Mechanic Street resident or two as part of that group. So I've talked to most of the people on my street about this. I've received a ton of input. It's, first of all, right now, people are driving at around 35 to 45 along Mechanic Street. That's what the police data says. That is the speed at which it's highly likely if somebody gets hit, they'll die. So we do already have accidents there. I know of a cyclist who was recently hit on Mechanic Street. It would be nice if we could collect some of that data, but people are going, if all the research says that we want to slow people down to about 20 miles per hour to decrease the chances of somebody dying if they get hit. So the basic premise being that if everybody's going to make mistakes sometimes, cyclists, pedestrians, drivers, but we want those mistakes to be less deadly. So how do we slow people down? Right now, there are already oftentimes instances where people have to really slow down because you can't get through with two cars. I park my cars on the street a lot just to create that kind of friction. It slows people down. A lot of people on the road are starting to do that. And I think that we can't forget. I mean, I understand that it's scary to say that there could be an accident when we try something new, but we are having accidents now and people are going too fast. So far, everybody they've talked about Mechanic Street has liked the idea. They have trouble. They write me and say, I really support the bike lanes proposal. People understand what bike lanes are. I don't know if they've fully grasped the advisory lane concept. I would like to see it resemble bike lanes a little bit more, like paint the whole side of the road in those advisory lanes green or something like that. But the people have been supportive and things that look confused. I mean, that's kind of our goal, is to get people to feel uncomfortable. So they slow down. People slow down when they see utility trucks in the middle of the road. So I don't think we can accomplish our goal without confusing people a little bit and making them uncomfortable. And the exciting thing about this to me is that it's the Bicycle Coalition of Maine, which is a really professional organization, that having them involved and kind of signing off on it is what makes me the most excited. So my hope is that we can kind of be as courageous as possible with a very thorough review, but being less afraid of the consequences of doing something than we are of the, consequences of the status quo. That's my pitch.
Margot, you asked what were the public was input on that. There hasn't been a public.
But
Really.
what Allison said,
I don't know why you would say that, because we get emails all the time. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I know there was something at the select board that was on the agenda and there was a presentation, but I don't think there was more than.
On Facebook and
No,
there are people that say this is so stupid because the roads are supposed to be, here the select board goes one more time trying to slow people down, and they need to get to work and they don't want to have to slow down with their logging truck, getting to their job. That's already the case. There are always going to be people that don't want to have to slow down. So yeah, some people don't like it. Some people aren't going to like anything that slows them down.
Margot.
the thing that I can imagine, and I really appreciate hearing you, Allison, say, that we need a disruptor of some kind. And I can imagine at the beginning, at both ends, you have, some sort of lollipop looking poles that say, one way, both ways. And, bicycle geared for bicycle traffic. And that's going to get, if it's big and it's bold and people are going to pay attention to that. And I see this, I love the courage to be able to say, we need to try it somewhere. And because, oh my gosh, could you imagine all these other places where it just means signage and awareness and share the road
Well, they have put it in other places in Maine.
In Saco and or Scarborough.
Scarborough and Falmouth, I think. You can look, after this meeting, if you go on the internet and type advisory lanes, you get a bunch of stuff on the history and where there's installations, and they even show all across the country some of the installations or pilot projects that are going on. Linda.
Dave, for the two vehicles passing each other, what's the width of that on Mechanic Street? Say those lines are in place, then what's the width of that center?
So it depends on where you are on the road, and that was one of my concerns in one location. But towards town, it's anywheres from the narrowest point is 22 feet, where the parking is. But a good part of the middle from let's say Knowlton Street up to Symington is 25 to 32 feet wide. So you could easily have a 4 or 5 foot lane and still have plenty of room in the middle, but they really don't want you to do that. They really want you to narrow the travel lane to 12, 13, 14 feet wide, because they don't want people to feel like they have enough travel lane on each side. They want them to feel like they're driving kind of down the middle of this travel way until they get to another vehicle and then slow down and then move into the advisory lane that has the dashed line as long as there's nobody there, and then move back in after they pass the oncoming motorist. It's that feeling of,
Hang
I
on,
don't
Bill.
have the whole road, and if somebody else is coming the other way, I have to slow down.
Right.
That's what they
Parking.
want.
It's a downtown feeling that you just advanced out of the downtown a little bit more, which makes perfect sense.
So what I proposed, or what we talked about, was there's three areas of concern. The areas of parking in the downtown, in which we were gonna, like I said, in those locations, you would have a double line in the middle, and you would show, this we're showing the green, so that people know that, all right, it's safe to be here. But there's actually enough room for the vehicles also.
So
Then
so
when
is
you,
the parking green in the green? I don't understand.
no, the green is the travel way.
Oh, so the parking is,
Actually, the green is the bike lane, excuse me.
Uh-huh.
The parking is to the right of that, or the curbside, the right side of the road,
okay,
and then the travel way is in the middle.
okay.
Then what you do where you have an area where, like a hill or a curve, is you lose the advisory lane. So that dashed line goes away. Which you can
So here's an
see right-
example.
right here in the lower part of the
One
right.
that people will recognize this easier. This area up here is that uphill where John Street meets Mechanic. And there's also this area where Simonton Road meets. Go ahead. I was just orienting people.
Okay, so you see, if you look at the bottom one, the bottom picture, if you were heading from right to left, looking at the screen, you're in the bike, you're to the right of the advisory dashed line, and you're driving. And then all of a sudden you get to the area where you lose line of sight. Now you're the bicyclist. You will now have to share the road, the travel lane, where the yellow line is. You see where the yellow line is? That's actually the line delineating each lane. It separates the two lanes. So now you don't have an advisory lane anymore. Now you have a regular road with a yellow line in the middle, which separates the two vehicles, but also means, the share means that you have to share the road with the vehicle at that point till you get out of that point, and then it goes back to an advisory lane. And that's only because you don't have enough width of the road in that area where you lose line of sight. And that was one way of handling it. And
This is not a very long stretch by any means.
no, it isn't.
No.
It's just a short section that gets you through the area that you lose line of sight.
Yeah, let me just orient you and run you through real quickly. So starting out here, I don't know if you see my cursor. It's John Street. We're going down towards town. This is the shared area. And then you go to the next panel and then you cross Simonton, which then will have the advisory lanes
Right.
starting. And then you head town a little bit more and you get just past Cobb Road and there's a little rise in the road and the line of sight is bad, which is why the yellow line comes back and you are, I don't know if that would be Sharrow's there or not.
That would be
Dave.
Sharrow's.
I think so. And then
Yeah.
once you crest the hill and line of sight gets better down by Oak Street, then you can go back to the advisory lane. And then continuing down into town, you've got this long stretch of advisory lanes. And then you get to that corner just before you get to, I never remember the name of this place. Bella Point.
Yeah.
Bella Point would be this parking lot down here on the second screen. That's another corner that has poor line of sight. Sharrow again, and then you head down towards town a little bit more. This is Bella Point right here in that upper left corner. And that's Knowlton Street, where the green would start, which says, hey, this is a bike lane. And then option one is just to go back to Sharrow's in the lower part of town, right where the parking lot is and the Bagel Cafe. Or option two is to continue the green all the way through that whole section.
Mhm.
So it's sort of the little bit of the options that we're considering. And when I first looked at the concept of advisory lanes, I was going, what? But then if I step back, Helen, I saw your face and I had the same reaction. I stepped back, really, the way the advisory lane works is the same way it works in any small town with small roads. You've got, and normally what you see are two fog lines, one on each side, and there's no markings in the middle of the road. And you go down and it's narrow, and you go slowly because it's narrow, because it's a small town. And then if a car comes, you scooch over. And that's basically what we're talking about, except it specifically says, hey, this lane over here, don't use it unless you have to, because this is for bikes. So it's not a real complicated concept.
And pay special attention to the fact that bikers have right of way.
Right, this is a bike lane. And Anita, you've had your hand up for a long time, so go ahead.
Thank you. I would favor the, since you were just talking about the sharrows versus the green lines downtown.
This
right
is what's
downtown,
up on the screen.
Past
That's what's on the
Knowlton.
screen. Yeah, yes.
Yeah, I would favor the green
This.
lines. Yeah, because Knowlton, you've got school kids coming right in that neighborhood. You have them coming down. It's just a lot more pedestrian and a lot more activities of all sorts going on in town. So I would favor the highest profile painting, that being the green lanes and the single shared area for that.
This is Knowlton. This is Knowlton.
Yes, I
right
see
here.
that. Yeah. So I think that's one of the questions you were asking, is which, those are two options, right?
That is one of the questions.
Yeah. I have a question about the yellow line in the middle. And I was wondering if Dave could help me understand why you're not talking about a double yellow line in those areas.
Well, actually, I think that is a double yellow, to be honest with you.
Okay, because
So you
well,
don't pass, and it means don't pass, it means stay in your lane.
yeah, I guess as a car driver, I mean, I sort of consider the yellow line not to pass, but to me, the double yellow line is much more, a much stronger statement to the car driver, much stronger statement than not.
I think that is a double yellow line. That was what Jim and I had talked about, is putting a double yellow there. And that's
Okay.
really because I mean, lines in the road mean something, right?
Yeah.
And a double yellow line
To
means
some people,
don't pass,
right?
and you stay in your lane.
Yeah, so good. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
I would also be in favor of maybe a more traditional line sign as well at the hills and curves where line of sight is impeded, by just putting a more traditional yellow sign saying give way to bicycles, or don't pass, or something that
We would have to use the share the road sign. That's the
Share-
MUTCD.
okay,
Yeah.
so
This one?
Not
No.
that one. Where the double yellow is, we'd probably use share the road sign. Give
Yeah.
four,
Oh, there it is. Here it is in the upper left, W1115. That's a
Yeah.
slow one. And there's another one, W63.
right.
and another question is, are there any kinds of signs that they have that sort of advise drivers what the law is, how much, I don't know, how much room they have to leave to the side of a bicyclist when they pass? Because it's consistently unnerving to me as a bicyclist to have people gun their engine and pass me on a hill when I know perfectly well they cannot see whether a car is coming in the other lane, which they are plainly in. And if we're going to be educating people, I don't know whether it'd be helpful to have some sign like that in one or two places on the length of the road, the full length of the road, all the way to the snow bowl, one or two signs. Just,
Allison? I'm sorry, were you done, Anita?
Yeah, I think so. Thank you.
Allison?
Oh, my comment was just about the double yellow lines make me really nervous because to me, that is a signal of when you've got, white lines on the side and double yellow lines, those are the markings of a highway. And it just, when I look at this street and it gives it a different feel to me. I don't know of small neighborhood streets with double yellow lines down the middle. It just, to me, it gives drivers more comfort to say, this is my lane and I can just go for it. So,
But it's
But
only a
I'm-
short section if we did do that. It's only, I mean,
Dave,
the other,
Dave, can you clarify in this image here, the top image, whether that yellow line continues all the way down from John Street down to Simonton? It shows it here just for a short distance, but I have a feeling you mean it to go all the way.
I think you're right. I think the intention was to have it all the way there.
Okay,
And
so continue.
that's
short
because it's so
distance.
narrow. That part of the
Yeah.
road is super narrow. You
to me,
know,
it just says like, okay, now you're going out of town. I already see people go faster as they go out of town. And
right.
like, to me, it's a really drastic change of field that says, okay, you're safe now. You're getting out of town. You can go back to being a highway driver.
I mean, we'll bring that up when we meet. I mean, maybe
Yeah.
the other people have some other ideas on how to handle that kind of situation. I don't have the answer to that, Allison. I mean, it's a tricky road because it isn't straight and flat. You know what I mean? If it was straight and flat and it was the same distance the whole way, this would be easy.
Yeah,
But it isn't, and that's the tricky part about it. So that being said, we might be able to only do this on a section of the road. You know what I mean? We only be able to do it halfway up the road, and then have to do sharrows the rest of the way, and maybe not have the yellow line.
We could have super sharrows, the sharrows that are, it's sharrow and green.
let me,
Middle of the road and.
if I could, I want to hear from some other folks too. Richard, Heidi, Linda, Helen, I know this isn't your town, but it's just next door and it could be happening. So
Right.
It's a model for other towns, and our hopes would be that this pilot would be successful and we would start seeing it on other streets. So thoughts?
I figured it might work. I had a question for Anita when she talked about cars trying to pass bikers. I know it always scares me when I come up on a biker and there's a hill or a curve and I can't see, but I know I have to be 3 feet away. Do you prefer the car to hang back until they can see, or?
Well, Helen, in answer to your question, my most recent bike ride just a day ago was 2 different cars did hang back until they could see.
Mhm.
They literally poked along behind me as I went up the hill. Of course, I thanked them with a wave and let them know as soon as I could see that they could come through. But they did hang back. They know that's what's safe to do. Other people don't. I don't know if I could give you a percentage. Jeff would be better at that with his experience. That is what you need to do. If you can't see that there's a car, whether there's a car coming at you, you're in for an accident if you go around the bicyclist.
Every day I ride, a car passes me on a blind hill. And 10% of the time, a car coming the other way is on their horn, honking at the car passing me and squeezing over into the dirt to give room to the guy that's going by. And I'm going, oh God, what's gonna happen this time? Every time.
Unfortunately, this treatment doesn't fix that problem.
It doesn't, it won't.
Uh,
No,
So
it
maybe the
doesn't.
double-
I'm aware of that, but I want to say one thing, Allison. Regarding the painting, I the idea of having a lot of paint on the road and all this signage, my first reaction when I saw this, especially in New York, in the city, and even downtown Portland, was like, oh my gosh, look at all this paint in all the directions. It's so confusing and it's so town, it's so city. It's like, can't we just be relaxed and calm and be nice? And the fact is that no, it's not. You got to get used to this directions. People are not responding to the easy blank slate. They need more structure to work within. That's sort of where I've come around. I'm stealing the thunder. Heidi or Richard?
Well, that's helpful. Thank you.
Linda?
Oh.
Heidi, go ahead.
I think for me, I think I'm probably in the same mode that you were originally, just kind of overwhelmed to think about not only a lot of paint, but switching back and forth all along a pretty short stretch of road. So it is a small town side road. However, a lot of people from out of town are coming through that road as well to get to different locations. And so, yeah, at the moment,
that was my first reaction too, Heidi. And I realized after that, when we're driving down the road, rules change all the time. You're going into a school zone, and then you're going into a white dotted line, and then a yellow dotted line, and then a double yellow. And that's part of driving. Things change. Yeah, I kind of backed off. My first reaction was yours. Totally. And I think I shared that with you too, Dave. Is like, I don't know about this changing. Maybe we should just have it the same the whole way, but I don't know. I think drivers are supposed to be aware. It's part of the law. Today, someone passed me, two of us who on our bikes, we were turning left in an intersection and they passed us on our left.
Yay.
And they honked at us. And my friend and I talked, and I said, there's a law that says you can't pass in an intersection. It's against the law to do that. And I was like, well, whatever.
So this is an education. Sorry, this is an opportunity for education, and we hope to expand those opportunities. So anything new is going to be challenging. I think initially it will slow people down as they try to sort it all out, all of which is good.
Well, is there something we can do to help with that? Think about that question. Dave, did you want to say something?
Yeah, Angela King didn't like the idea, and she works with Bicycle Coalition of Maine too, and she didn't like the idea of the changing, going from advisory lane to Sharrow, and she wanted to keep the advisory lane the whole distance of the road. And, one of the ways of doing that is in the areas of hazard or concern, you put the bollards in the ones with the spring in the road and the roadway, which kind of protects the bicyclists or in the actual in their lane. And I mentioned this with Allison. I'm going to bring this up at our meeting. I'm kind of wondering if maybe setting up something like, I'll show you right here. Setting some of these up right here in the road, kind of running, parallel to where the advisory lane would be, or a section. And then
You look about a foot wide. Is that a temporary thing you set down?
yeah, it's temporary, but it's solid and it lays on the road. It doesn't move. And just narrow the road up in just those sections, maybe the curve on both sides of the road, and put a camera there and put the speed meter there, or put it where we had it before, and see how it changes the speed data, and see how, if anybody hits the bollard. See, you know what I mean? Because it would be like a test, and we could say that we're trying to do some traffic calming measures and kind of monitor it and see what it does. And I mean, I think that the data would be awesome. You know what I mean?
I do. But put up several, not just one.
What's a baller? Because I'm thinking like candy cane striped poles that, you know.
He just held it up. He just held it up.
Like this right here.
I
Like
don't see it.
today,
Look
like
at-
when you're driving into the hospital.
Oh, am I looking at you physically? I need to go into a different view.
See, this thing moves like this, and you can put it in the room.
Hang on, hang
Oh,
on,
yeah,
hang
yeah, yeah,
on.
yeah. I see it now, Dave.
Linda's been dying to say something.
No, we could talk all night about the details and what we could do and so forth, but as the Pathways Committee, does it help at all if we just reach a consensus and we fully support the town of Rockport and Dave as he implements this? Because it's time that we totally do share the road, and that's the expectation. It's no longer please, please, but it's our expectation. We've certainly had lots of support. I've seen lots of support for this, for something like this. And I mean, is that a necessary move at this point, that the Pathways Committee endorses this?
Yeah.
I think what I was looking for, that's fine. I don't think there's any, I would be surprised if there was any objection to us doing something. What I was looking for was, for instance, this question that Dave brought up. His one idea is we could run just a bicycle lane or a fog lane all the way up, unchanged, versus this more complicated suggestion, which has, you know, shared lanes and not shared lanes and green lanes and not green lanes. You could just keep it simple for the drivers.
But why
And
are
that would be one option. And this is another option. And Anita weighed in. She said she likes having the green, this option down here, this green not the advisory lanes, there's something else. I don't
Warning.
know what to call them. The warning lanes, the green lanes.
I think that's what they were called, yep.
I can't remember, but these green warning lanes to be carried out in this
Caution.
manner all the way up to Knowlton Street through downtown. And then she weighed in and said, then it could go to this proposal here. Another option, you could have the green warning lanes and then go to just fog lanes all the way out. So I'm trying to, this discussion was really good because it opened up various concerns, not just yours, but the whole town, the whole community is going to be looking at these things going, what are they going to think? And what would be bold at the same time? And let's not be scared of doing things. And this is just an experiment. It's not permanent. The paint will probably be gone by next spring because of the winter.
That's not great, because I think we're in the process of training drivers. So
Sure. No, I'm just saying that if it's a disaster, after this winter, we can either repaint it or not repaint it. That's sort of the beauty of this.
I really like Dave's phrase, safe passage. And I think that if we adopt that more along with the word esplanade, then we are moving the conversation forward, and something like this moves it all forward. And I have full faith that, you know, you guys at your meeting are going to figure out whether to do green or the advisory.
I agree.
I do not agree with just minimizing it. I think if you're going to do something like this, go full bore and do it.
Heidi, you can email me after you have a chance to process. Richard, anything? You're on mute, buddy.
Yeah, I know. I guess my only real comment has to do with the yellow lines. I think a single yellow line seems to be better. I don't think you need the double. There are lots of rural roads that do divide it with a single yellow line.
I just looked out my window and Pascal has a double yellow line down it.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's because it's a state road.
Oh,
That's the rule. That's what's advised.
Hidden in this project is the fact that this is not a state road, so we can do this.
Do whatever you want.
Yeah, and it's why it did not happen on on Mountain Street. Allison?
Did I hear accurately that Jeff, you're going to be part of the small group the small group meetings with DOT and I mean, I think that makes me feel good. I also feel like I could be like a little bit less involved in the details as long as what we do is kind of on the bold side of things. And I feel like Jeff, I'll probably just support, like as a select board member, I will support and advocate for wherever you come down, because you seem to be not only just the most familiar with biking on that road, but also all the other considerations. And so I feel really good about the idea of you being involved in that and then supporting whatever you come up with Dave and the rest of them. But
Well, I really appreciate everybody's input. It really helps me too, and the questions, clarifications. Are we done with this discussion?
it is
Any
nice for the
objections?
select board to hear a bold endorsement, enthusiasm from the Pathways Committee, because there will be people that are really angry about this. And, I've been called lots of names already just for posting it on Facebook, but there were no arguments that convinced me it was the wrong thing to do, but just nastiness. And so it is nice to hear encouragement. And I'm sure that's the case for the other select board members too, that
I'll have to go look. I didn't track on that discussion, Allison. Sorry, I would have weighed in.
oh, I'll tag you next time.
Okay. Yeah, is there any objection from the group? And I already said this at the select board meeting, that we recommended going with a bold move. That's when I said that 2 weeks ago, when BCM did their presentation, because I felt I had the backing to do that from prior discussions. But I'll make sure that's my intent. I am definitely on the bold side. I think we can do this. I really, really do. All right. I'm checking the time now. It's 7:10.
I'm gonna have to bow out because I've got
Okay.
another meeting at 7:30 and I've got to move a little bit.
Yeah, and let me just, I think there's nothing pushing us. So what we'll do is we'll have another meeting next month, and I'm gonna push off. We can talk about the issue of that I binned this time, about how to set up some system for compensating landowners and to give property for the good of the public use. And then we can talk about the other BCM issues that came up during the conversations with them, which are on the agenda: slow me down, and AARP, age-friendly designation, which Angela was pushing that we should do. And I exchanged a couple of emails with her, Dave, on that some more. That's all I have. Does anybody else have anything urgent?
Do you want a motion on this painting, or are you going to wait for people to mull on it a little bit? Did you want to vote or a motion on accepting the?
Linda suggested, I think Linda suggested that we adopt some position.
Right, so we're going to take a vote. Shall I make a motion or anything?
Sure, if you'd like to move something.
Well, I move that we accept BCM's latest version 3, which is what I noticed on the top of that screen that you showed, version 3, for the paint markings on Mechanic Street.
Is there a second to that specific motion?
I'll second it.
And any discussion on that?
Do you suppose, oops, Do you suppose
Yes,
we could just add a sentence saying we fully endorse whatever that was you just said, Anita, and for the purpose of safe passage for pedestrians and bicyclists along Mechanic Street or something to that effect.
this doesn't really talk about pedestrians, this painting, but I understand what you're saying. Any other comments?
We might not want you to be quite so specific, seeing that the idea is that something can change and that there's going to be some tweaking and that it might, it's more helpful to just have from the, in terms of being able to use this at the select board meeting, to have something a little bit more general.
That's my concern as well, Allison. That is my concern. What Anita moved was that we accept version 3, which means that if anything happens after this meeting with Dave that isn't in accordance with version 3, Pathways does not accept.
Right.
And that's not good. It should be something like we support the idea of moving forth, and this is from Linda, additional safe passage of cyclists on Mechanic Street, and fully endorse boldly doing so, something like that. But without specifics, because we're still working on those. I don't know what the specific wording, I'm not so good at that, but.
They could also just appoint you to represent them, and whatever you think is good can be the final word, maybe, I don't know.
That would be another option too.
I think just a general endorsement of making it safer on Mechanic Street, and that we have full faith that it's going to come to fruition given the gathering of the minds at this next meeting. So, I mean, it's just one sentence you really need, Allison, right? At the select board level.
Yeah,
And maybe that you'll help with some public education if we need help, which we will.
Right.
yeah.
Absolutely.
What about we empower Jeff to represent our interests on this matter?
So here's what I have. I compress it. The Pathways Committee endorses making Mechanic Street safer for cyclists and pedestrians, and empower Jeff to represent us in ongoing design details.
I love it, but I'm not on the committee, technically.
Technically,
If you move
Richard,
that. if
Richard
you
is,
move
that's a
that, then I
yes,
second
Richard?
it.
Is that what that is, Richard?
Yes, that's a yes.
Any of these? We got all these? All right. Thanks. We'll see you next month. Thank you so much. Look at all these happy faces. Thanks, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Okay. Go ahead.